Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
Look, I need to tell someone this story, because honestly, I'm still trying to figure out how everything went so wrong. I'm Rebecca, I'm 41 now, and let me just say up front, this isn't some sob story where I'm gonna take all the blame like some therapy victim. Because the truth is, I was a catch back then. And I mean a real catch. When I was 30, I had it all. The kind of looks that made other women hate me just for walking into a room. And trust me, I could feel their jealousy burning holes in my back. Austin and I met when I was 25, and honestly, he was punching way above his weight class with me. The guy was decent looking enough, had a steady job doing something with computers. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills. But let's be real here, he landed me because I saw potential in him, not because he was some prize himself. I was working part-time at a boutique back then, mostly because I didn't need to kill myself working when I had other options. Between us, I always knew I could find someone to take care of me if I wanted, and Austin seemed like the reliable type who'd appreciate having someone like me. The first few years were actually pretty good. He worshipped me, which I'll admit was nice. He'd come home from work, and I'd be there looking amazing, house clean, dinner ready. I was basically the perfect girlfriend and then wife. I put effort into looking good for him, kept myself in shape, made sure our place always looked like something out of a magazine. And yeah, he appreciated it. He'd tell his friends how lucky he was, and I could see other guys looking at me when we went out together, wondering how he got so fortunate. But here's where things started getting complicated. I got pregnant. And let me tell you, pregnancy was not kind to me. I mean, I still looked better than most women on their best day, but I wasn't used to not being perfect. The whole thing was harder than I expected, and suddenly I needed him to step up more. Like, way more. I was growing a human being dealing with morning sickness, exhaustion, all of it, and he's still expecting me to handle everything like before? I don't think so. After Colton was born, things got even more complicated. This tiny human needed constant attention. I was tired all the time, and my body wasn't bouncing back as fast as I wanted. I started asking Austin to help more, with the baby, with the house, with everything. And at first he did, but I could tell he was getting worn down. He'd come home from work, and I'd need him to take over with Colton so I could shower or just have 5 minutes to myself. Then he'd want to relax or watch TV, and I'm like, seriously? I've been dealing with a crying baby all day, and you want to unwind? I started getting more specific about what I needed from him. If he was going to sit on the couch, he could at least fold laundry while he watched his shows, or he could give Colton a bath while I made dinner. Little things that any good husband should want to do for his family. But instead of stepping up like a man, he started getting moody about it. Like I was asking for too much, when all I wanted was a partner who actually partnered with me. And can I just say, the way some of these other moms at the playground would look at me when I'd mention needing more help at home, these frumpy little bitches acting like asking your husband to actually participate in family life, was somehow wrong. I'd be sitting there looking put together while they're in their stained yoga pants, and they'd give me these looks like I was the problem. Please. Half of them looked like they'd given up on themselves completely, so excuse me for having standards. Austin started making comments about how I was adjusting to motherhood, like there was something wrong with me for expecting him to step up. I mean, I was still cooking, cleaning, taking care of our son, and somehow I was the one who needed to adjust. The man would come home, kiss Colton on the head, ask how my day was, and then settle in like his work was done. Meanwhile, I'm running on 3 hours of sleep, haven't had a real conversation with another adult all day, and he's wondering why I seem a little stressed. The thing is, I started noticing how other husbands treated their wives, and honestly, it made me realize I was getting shortchanged. My friend Cassie's husband would surprise her with little weekend trips, and my cousin's husband actually enjoyed doing projects around the house. Meanwhile, Austin would come home, eat the dinner I made, and then act like he'd done his part for the day just by bringing home a paycheck. Like, congratulations on doing the bare minimum that literally every adult man should do? I started pointing out these differences to him, not to be mean, but to help him see that he could be doing more. When Cassie posted pictures of the surprise birthday party her husband threw for her, I showed Austin and said something like, "Isn't this sweet? Some husbands really know how to make their wives feel special." And instead of taking the hint and maybe planning something nice for me, he got all defensive and started saying stuff like, "Well, I'm not him and you're not her." Which honestly was pretty insulting when you think about it. The worst part was how he started acting like I was high maintenance. Me. I mean, yes, I have standards, but that's not the same thing as being high maintenance. I like nice things. I take care of myself. I expect to be treated well. These are normal expectations for any woman who respects herself. But Austin started making these little comments about how expensive I was, or how I always wanted something. It's like, sorry, I don't want to live like college students forever? Sorry, I think a married woman with a child deserves more than the absolute minimum? And can we talk about how he started pulling back physically too? I mean, I'd put effort into looking good for him, even after having a baby, and he's acting like he's too tired or too stressed to appreciate it. I'd try to initiate things, and he'd have some excuse about work or being exhausted. But then he'd stay up late watching sports or playing games on his phone. So you're too tired for your wife, but not too tired for whatever mindless entertainment you want to zone out with. Real nice, Austin. The final straw for me was when I asked him to watch Colton for a few hours so I could go get my hair done. Something I hadn't done in months because I was always putting everyone else first. And this man actually said, "Can't you do that when he's napping?" Like, are you kidding me right now? Your own son, and you're acting like watching him is some huge favor you're doing for me instead of just being a father? That's when I realized I was married to someone who saw me as his responsibility instead of his partner. And honestly, I started wondering if there were men out there who would actually appreciate what they had with me. Because I'd see these other wives at the grocery store or at Colton's playgroup. And let me tell you, most of them had completely let themselves go. I'm talking about women who used to probably be decent looking, now walking around in oversized sweatshirts and messy ponytails, acting like that's just what happens when you become a mom. But not me. I still did my makeup every morning, still wore clothes that actually fit properly, still made sure I looked like someone worth being married to. And what did I get for it? A husband who acted like my efforts were just expected. Like it was my job to look good while he could show up to our marriage in whatever wrinkled shirt he grabbed off the floor. By the time I turned 30, I was done. I mean, completely done with pretending this marriage was working. Austin had turned into this boring, predictable guy who thought marriage meant he could stop putting in effort. Every day was the same. He'd go to work, come home, eat dinner, and then zone out in front of the TV or his computer. Weekends were spent doing household projects or visiting his parents. Where was the excitement? Where was the romance? Where was the man who used to actually try to impress me? The breaking point came on my 30th birthday. I'd been dropping hints for weeks about wanting to do something special. Maybe a weekend trip, or at least dinner somewhere nice. You know what this man did? He got me a gift card to Target and suggested we order pizza and watch a movie at home. A gift card to Target for my 30th birthday, like I'm some suburban mom who gets excited about household supplies. I looked at him that night, really looked at him, and I realized I felt nothing. No love, no attraction, no excitement about our future together. Just this overwhelming sense that I was wasting my life with someone who saw me as convenient rather than special. I was 30 years old. I still looked amazing. I was still getting attention from men everywhere I went. Why was I settling for someone who treated me like an old married couple when I still had so much to offer? That's when I started thinking seriously about divorce. And honestly, the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. I mean, what was keeping me in this marriage? Sure, there was Colton, but plenty of divorced parents managed just fine. And financially, I'd get the house and child support, so it's not like I'd be struggling. Plus, Austin made decent money, so he'd be paying me enough to maintain my lifestyle while I figured out what I wanted to do next. I started imagining what my life could be like as a single woman. I could go out when I wanted, date men who actually appreciated me, maybe even find someone who was more successful than Austin. I mean, I'd learned a lot about what I wanted in a man from this marriage, and next time, I'd definitely aim higher. Someone with ambition. Someone who knew how to treat a woman right. Someone who wouldn't just give up on romance because we'd signed some papers. On the drive home from his company picnic, where he'd spent the entire afternoon talking shop with his coworkers while I sat there like some decoration he'd brought along, I told him I wanted a divorce. Just like that. No big fight, no dramatic scene, just a simple statement of fact. I said I wasn't happy, hadn't been happy for a long time, and I thought we'd both be better off apart. You should have seen the look on his face, like he had no idea this was coming. Which, honestly, just proved my point about how checked out he'd become. He tried to argue with me, saying we should try counseling, or that every marriage goes through rough patches. But I was done with trying. I'd already spent years trying to get him to be the husband I needed, and nothing had changed. Why would I waste more time hoping he'd suddenly become someone different? I told him I'd already talked to a lawyer and knew what I was entitled to, and that I thought we should keep things civil for Colton's sake. The divorce process was actually easier than I expected. Austin didn't fight me on much, probably because he felt guilty for being such a disappointing husband all those years. I got the house, which was exactly what I wanted. We agreed on joint custody, which meant I'd have my son half the time and free time to focus on myself the other half. Perfect. I also got decent child support and spousal support, which meant I didn't have to worry about money right away. The first few months after the divorce were amazing. I felt like I could breathe again, you know? No more pretending to be happy with someone who bored me to tears. No more having to consider someone else's feelings when I wanted to make plans. No more settling for pizza and Netflix when I wanted to actually go out and have fun. I was finally free to be myself again. I started going out more, hitting up some of the nicer places downtown when Colton was with Austin. And let me tell you, being a newly divorced 30-year-old was like having superpowers. Men were constantly buying me drinks, asking for my number, wanting to take me to dinner. It was like being 25 again, except better because now I had experience and knew what I wanted. I went on dates with lawyers, with businessmen, with guys who actually had ambition and success. Men who knew how to dress well, who took me to restaurants Austin never would have thought to try, who treated me like I was someone special instead of just someone convenient. It was exactly what I'd been missing in my marriage: excitement, romance, the feeling that I was with someone who actually valued me. But here's what started getting frustrating. None of these relationships were turning into anything serious. I'd go on amazing dates, have great conversations, feel that spark that had been missing with Austin, and then nothing. They'd disappear after a few weeks, or they'd make it clear they weren't looking for anything serious. Some of them even had the nerve to suggest I was looking for something too intense when I'd hint about wanting a real relationship. Years started passing faster than I expected. By the time I hit 35, I was starting to feel like the dating scene had shifted somehow. The quality of men seemed to be declining, or maybe they just weren't as eager to pursue something serious with me as they used to be. I was still getting attention, don't get me wrong, but it felt different. Less intense, less committed, more casual than what I was used to. I started noticing that a lot of the successful men my age were either married or dating women who were younger than me. Which was frustrating because I still looked great for my age. Better than most women in their 20s, honestly, but apparently men were more shallow than I'd given them credit for. They'd rather have some 25-year-old who didn't know what she wanted than a mature, experienced woman who knew her worth. Meanwhile, Austin seemed to be doing just fine. When I dropped Colton off at his apartment, he looked, I don't know, lighter somehow. Like he was relieved to be free of me, which was pretty insulting when you think about it. I mean, he should have been devastated about losing someone like me, but instead he seemed almost happy about our new arrangement. What really bothered me was how easily he'd adjusted to the whole single dad thing. I'd expected him to struggle more with having Colton on his own, maybe realize how much work I'd been doing all those years. But instead, he seemed to actually enjoy their time together. He'd take Colton to the park, to movies, even on little weekend trips. It was like suddenly he was father of the year, when he'd barely been present during our marriage. Then Colton started mentioning that Austin had been dating someone. Nothing serious at first, he said, just someone he'd met through work. But the idea that Austin was out there dating while I was struggling to find anyone worthwhile was pretty insulting. I mean, what did he have to offer that I didn't? He was older, more boring, and honestly not that great looking. What woman would choose him over the options she probably had? By the time I turned 38, I was starting to feel genuinely frustrated with how my life was going. I'd been divorced for 8 years, and I still hadn't found anyone who was worth settling down with again. The dating apps were useless, full of men who were clearly lying about their age, their job, their relationship status, whatever. And the men I was meeting in real life seemed to be getting less and less impressive as time went on. Then came the news that really knocked me sideways. Colton came home from Austin's one weekend and casually mentioned that his dad was getting married. Just like that, like it was no big deal. Austin was marrying this plain, boring woman, Tiffany, after dating her for less than 2 years, when he'd barely proposed to me after we'd been together for 3 years. I tried to act casual about it, like I was happy for them or whatever, but honestly, I was pretty shocked. Not because I wanted Austin back, or anything like that, but because it felt like he was moving on so easily, while I was still struggling to find someone worth my time. Here I was, still single after all these years, and he'd managed to find someone willing to marry his boring ass? It didn't make sense. What really started bothering me was how different Austin seemed when I'd see him during pickups and drop-offs. He looked more confident somehow, like he'd found something that made him happy in a way I never had. Which was pretty insulting, honestly. I'd given him the best years of my life, had his child, made his home beautiful, and this is how he repaid me? By being happier with someone else? His new wife started showing up to some of Colton's school events, and I have to say, seeing her in person was even more confusing than her social media photos. She really wasn't anything special. Pleasant enough, I guess, but definitely not the kind of woman you'd expect a man to choose over someone like me. What bothered me most was how she interacted with Colton. So natural with him, like being a stepmom was just easy for her. Then came the news that really threw me for a loop. Colton came home one day and mentioned that Austin and Tiffany were having a baby. A baby. Austin was starting over with a whole new family, while I was still trying to figure out my life. The man who'd acted like parenting was such a burden when we were married was choosing to do it all over again with someone else. When the baby was born, a little girl they named Emma, Colton was over the moon. He showed me pictures on his phone, talked constantly about how cute she was, how much she looked like Austin. And I'm sitting there thinking, great, now Austin has his perfect little family, with his perfect little wife, and I'm the bitter ex-wife who couldn't make it work. The thing that really got to me was seeing how Austin looked in those photos. He was glowing, honestly. Like becoming a dad again had given him this new energy and happiness that I'd never seen when we were together. Which just confirmed what I'd suspected all along. He'd never been fully invested in our marriage the way he was in his new relationship. So here I am now at 41, and honestly, I'm starting to get really frustrated with how everything turned out. It's been 11 years since my divorce, and instead of finding the amazing life I thought I deserved, I'm sitting in this empty house most nights, scrolling through dating apps filled with men who are either completely wrong for me or playing games I'm too old to deal with. The dating scene at 41 is brutal, and I don't care what anyone says about age being just a number. Men my age want women in their 20s and 30s. The ones who are interested in women my age are usually desperate or have serious issues that explain why they're still single. And don't even get me started on the men in their 50s, who think I should be grateful for their attention just because they're willing to date someone older. What really gets to me is how Austin's life just keeps getting better while mine feels stuck. He got promoted again at work. They bought this beautiful house in a better neighborhood than where I'm still living. And from what Colton tells me, they're genuinely happy together. Austin takes family vacations now, does weekend projects with Tiffany, acts like the engaged husband and father he never was with me. I've put on some weight over the years. Not a lot, but enough that my clothes don't fit the same way they used to. My face is showing signs of aging that no amount of skincare can completely hide. I'm still attractive, don't get me wrong, but I'm not turning heads the way I used to. And in a dating market that's already brutal for women my age, losing even a little bit of my edge feels devastating. The house that I was so excited to get in the divorce now feels like a burden. It's too big for just me and Colton part-time. The mortgage payments are eating up most of my income, and I can't afford to maintain it the way it needs to be maintained. Meanwhile, Austin and Tiffany's new house is gorgeous, updated, well-decorated, the kind of place I always thought I'd end up living in. Colton is 16 now and has his own life, his own friends, his own interests. He still comes to stay with me, but I can tell he's more comfortable at Austin's house. There's more space, more activity, more family energy with the baby and Tiffany around. Here, it's just me asking about his day and trying to make conversation while he does homework or talks to his friends. The loneliness is starting to get to me, though. Evenings when Colton is at Austin's house, I sit in this big, empty house and wonder what I'm doing with my life. I scroll through social media and see my friends posting pictures of family dinners and couples trips, while my posts are mostly selfies and pictures of meals I made for myself. I look successful and independent, but honestly, I feel forgotten. What makes it worse is seeing how content Austin looks in all the photos Colton shows me or that I see online. He's gained a little weight, has some gray in his hair, looks older like everyone our age does. But he also looks settled, satisfied with his life in a way that I never am, like he found something with Tiffany that he never had with me, which honestly doesn't make sense because I was obviously the better catch. Sometimes I catch myself wondering what would have happened if I'd tried harder to make my marriage work, if I'd been more patient with Austin's shortcomings, if I'd focused on building something together instead of looking for something better. But then I remind myself that I shouldn't have had to settle for less than I deserved, and Austin clearly wasn't capable of being the husband I needed. The problem isn't that I made the wrong choice. The problem is that life didn't turn out the way it was supposed to. I did everything right. I looked amazing. I was a great wife and mother. I had reasonable expectations for how I wanted to be treated. It's not my fault that Austin couldn't step up, and it's not my fault that the dating scene is full of losers who can't recognize quality when they see it. But sitting here at 41, single, watching my ex-husband live this perfect life with his younger wife and their adorable family, I have to admit, this isn't how I thought my story would go. And honestly, I'm starting to wonder if it ever will.